All right, well, welcome everybody. My name is Jeremy Krones. I'm the Executive Director of Colorado Headwaters Land Trust, based here in Grand County. Our mission is to conserve and steward the open lands and natural character of the headwaters of the Colorado River in partnership with the local community. And this week is Hats Off for Headwaters, which is our annual fundraiser. Happens in the fall, and it's to raise money for our organization, but also for a lot of our projects that we're working on throughout the county. The one that everyone will be hearing about throughout this week, but then especially on Sunday at our in-person Hats Off for Headwaters banquet, is the Granby Highlands Trails Conservation Easement Project. That won't be the focus of this conversation, but keep it in mind, and I can talk about it farther on down the week. Tonight is our first of 3 virtual panels. This one is traditionally conservation professionals, and we like to get other colleagues of ours on the line just to kind of chat about conservation in Grand County and other work that we do in the natural world. This week and today we have Eric Freels, who is the new district ranger for the Sulphur Ranger District here in Arapahoe National Forest in Grand County. I'm really happy to have him here. He just started, and I'm going to let Eric introduce himself. I'm going to, unpin me and turn it over to Eric. Eric, do you want to say hi and give us a brief bio?
Sure. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Jeremy, for the invite to participate. I'm a huge supporter of Land Trust and the work that you guys do, and I'm glad to be a part of this effort you guys have this week. As Jeremy said, I am the district ranger here on the Sulphur Ranger District of the Arapahoe and Roosevelt National Forest and Pawnee Grassland. We are the westernmost district on the forest. Most of the forest is around, basically up from the Wyoming line on the Fort Collins side down to Idaho Springs and to Berthoud Pass. And we're kind of on this side of the Continental Divide. We manage 442,000 acres or so of land over here on this side, including 4 wilderness areas and the Arapahoe National Recreation Area, which encompasses the 3 lakes up here on the north part of the county, mainly still Shadow Mountain Lake and Lake Granby. And so it's a busy forest. We have a lot of recreation use. We manage about 14 campgrounds, hundreds of miles of trails, both motorized, non-motorized. We also have one of the larger ski areas in the state here, Winter Park, where they have about 7,500 acres of our forest, of your forest, I should say, under a permit for ski area, which they are doing some great work there as well. We also have the Fraser Experimental Forest here on the district, and that is down there on the south end near Fraser and the ski area. And they do a lot of, they've been there, they're one of the longest experimental forests in the country. They work closely with NASA and other large agencies to do all kinds of studies, snow retention, obviously tree cultivation and silviculture kind of practices and kind of studies around that realm. But it's a great asset here in our community as well. It's open to the public to recreate in. And you know, the other thing about our district is that we provide the drinking water through Denver, the Northern Water up here on the north end through the 3 lakes, and the Denver Water Board that has a water catchment system down there around Fraser and the Moffett Tunnel, which you guys that are local here know all about. So that's the district in a nutshell. For myself, as Jeremy said, I started here in, technically I started in May. I came from the George Washington and Jefferson National Forest in Virginia. I was living in Northern Virginia or in the Harrisonburg, Virginia area. We managed a fairly large district there, about 600,000 acres. That's pretty big for the East Coast. We were right there in the Shenandoah Valley, and the Shenandoah National Park was right to the east of us. So it was a really unique, beautiful area. Moved out there in 2019 to kind of get closer to family and to get experience as a deputy district ranger and as a line officer. Previous to that, my career was out here mostly on the west slope of Colorado. I started in '01 in Steamboat Springs on the Medbo route as a wildlife technician. Worked there for about 4 years, and then moved around the country, chasing some other jobs. Ended up in Dolores, Colorado as a wildlife biologist. Most of my career was a wildlife biologist, and worked down there on the Trace Rios Field Office and the San Juan Public Lands Office. It was a service first office that managed both BLM and Forest Service. And that was an awesome experience. And I wish we still did that, but it just it is what it is. Spent about 8 years down there, and then we moved up to Grand Junction, Colorado, where I was a wildlife biologist on the G-Bug National Forest, the Grand Mesa, Uncompahgre, and Gunnison National Forest. Every forest has to have at least three names in there to be a real forest. So that was a great experience. Got to, we managed the Grand Mesa area, which I'm sure many of you have experienced, and also it was interesting to get management on the west side of the valley there on the Uncompahgre Plateau, which is a really unique area as well here in western Colorado. So it's great to be back in Colorado and be on the West Slope. I feel like Grand County is officially West Slope, right? So it's good to be back here. And this is a beautiful district. It's a hardworking district. Some committed professionals and employees here. We have been understaffed for too long here, and trying to manage this enormous amount of resources that we have here. And so we're trying to make some corrections there. And I think we're on the right path. And I look forward to what the future is going to bring here for the Sulphur Ranger District and for our community here in the Grand County. So that's me in a nutshell, Jeremy.
Wow. Well, that was a great introduction. Thank you for that. Kind of crossed off a few of my intro questions, but I would like to, you started explaining yourself with your career. I'm curious to know if you can give us a brief background of what led you to that point. Was it how you were raised? Was it education? One magical trip in the backcountry that set you on your path to wear green pants, or what led you into this field?
That's a great question. I grew up in Kentucky, central Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, to be honest, and to be precise. Grew up fishing, outdoors. Once I got older, we were always in the Red River Gorge area, if you're familiar with that or heard of that, in the Daniel Boone National Forest. Always loved to be outside from a young age. And I ended up going to college in upstate South Carolina, at a small school outside of Clemson. It was a small liberal arts school, and studied biology, because I wasn't sure. I knew I had a passion for trying to find a link to what I like to do, which was be outside and to recreate and to kind of meet this inner passion I had about wildlife and wildlife conservation. And I can't really explain how it started, but around that time in my early 20s and late teens, I started learning about endangered species and really some of the things that were going on in the world, and started really learning about, the man-made extinction that's going on and the sixth extinction. And it was like, wow, what is going on here? And how can I do something? How can I be a part of this? And then, and so I got my degree, moved out to Colorado right away in '98, moved to Denver, painted houses for a year, and I knew I needed to go back to school. And I got back into CSU, and I wanted to get more detailed, in wildlife studies. And so that's what I did. I went back to school and studied wildlife, and really, started learning more about this and learning more about how land management and habitat management is key to wildlife habitat and wildlife, kind of their ability to maintain populations and to have sustainable populations. And so really that's kind of where it started. And it was always this drive to kind of figure out how to find my niche. And it wasn't Forest Service centric at all, and then it was just, how can I make the biggest difference? And then I got a job surveying for the southwestern willow flycatcher down in New Mexico with the Bureau of Reclamation, and it was an awesome job, and I really felt the connection to really doing some important work on this very endangered bird, and I was like, okay, this is it. How do I make this work? And you know, and I started learning more about the land management agencies. I was out in Colorado by this time, and as you and I have talked about, Jeremy, it's different when you get out west, and just the onus and the you know, you realize the importance of the amount of public lands we have out here, and what that means for habitat fragmentation, or lack of, I should say, and habitat, and just the continuous, you know, I'm looking over at Rocky Mountain National Park right now as it goes up into the Never Severn Wilderness, and it's like amazing what we have here for habitat, and you just don't, you know, and you take that for granted in other places, and I can say that from living a lot of places in this country, but so once I got into school, I met someone else that needed some seasonals up in Steamboat, and one thing led to the other, and I got a job up in Steamboat, and really had a great mentor up there, and really learned about, you know, the Forest Service mission, and what you know, multiple resources and managing for multiple resources means. And I'll be honest with you, that took a little time, because I was a young, idealistic, you know, person that was going to save endangered species, right? And to be able to compromise that, even one tree for a timber sale or a trail or whatever, fill in the blank, right? It took a little bit of a emotional maturing, I should say, and an evolution in my thoughts. Really, it was about, you know, came back to, okay, but we still manage this large landscape. Forest Service still manages, you know, what, 260 million acres in the country or something like that, and you add that to the Park Service and the BLM, and it's a substantial piece. And then, you know, over the years, I just started kind of really understanding how I can maybe apply my passion for wildlife and make it work with us having to do these other things that we need to do in our mission, and that we're charged to do, as far as providing timber, providing oil and gas, recreation, ski areas, you know, all the things we do, water. You know, there's a compromise to all that, and so that's kind of where I've come to now, full circle. And but that's where it started, and that's and I wouldn't change a thing about it. And you know, I still feel, you know, that we have a strong mission associated with providing wildlife habitat. I know that's a lot of the work that you guys do on retaining easements and maintaining, you know, all these parcels of lands for you know, for so they won't be developed into the future. As we know, development is one of those things that, you know, causes the demise of species all over the world.
That's right.
So that's how I got into it, Jeremy.
Yeah. Well, that's a great story. I took a note. You said upstate South Carolina. That's not a term many people hear. To be frank, despite being from the East Coast, South Carolina is one of the 2 Atlantic states I've never been to, South Carolina and Rhode Island. So just hearing upstate. But Daniel Boone National Forest is unbelievable. It's a treasure that I think is pretty undervalued by a lot of folks.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just to clarify on that, the upstate is up kind of where North Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina all come together up there, and kind of like where the Appalachian Mountains start, kind of.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of the upstate there. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, you talked a lot about endangered species, and you were using the word compromise. And when I entered the field, I was taught collaboration. That was both the term, but also the attitude to have. I don't know your age, but how, you know, the popular story, especially around endangered species and the national forest specifically, is the spotted owl in the Pacific Northwest. How did that story, or did those events affect you? Where were you in your trajectory when that was really going on?
Yeah. So that was before my time, just
Okay,
to put that out there.
I was being safe, you know.
But one of my mentors that I worked with down in Dolores, she was right in the middle of that.
Mm,
And the Northwest Plan that came out of that, the owl battles, the spotted owl war, if you whatever you want to call it.
yeah, the timber wars is what
Yeah, the
all
timber. I
books
mean,
call it. Yeah.
yeah, those were that was an event that really reshaped the agency as a whole, the Forest
Mhm.
Service, and how we go about with our analysis and assess impacts to not only endangered species but our sensitive species and other species of concerns. But so that was before my time, but it really did set the stage for other things. And when I was coming in the early 2000s, the lynx was just being reintroduced in Colorado.
Okay.
So the lynx was the spotted owl of our times back then.
Mm,
There was a lot of uncertainty on how this was going to change the management actions of the forest here in Colorado. They have specific habitat needs, and it was the first 2 years of my career. Uh, I was there because of lynx. I was picking up snowshoe hare poop, and we were assessing snowshoe hare densities as it relates to lynx habitat.
wow.
And so those are good things to learn from, and it's still the Northwest Plan is still in force. It's still being implemented. It's one of those things that was amazing that it probably saved that species without
Oh,
doubt.
definitely.
It was one of those things that you talk to the folks on the ground. There was a lot of I mean, when you start dealing with people's livelihoods
Hmm.
and their families' livelihoods and that stuff, that it gets serious quick, right? And it's
Yeah.
you're talking about more than just trees and species, but there's also a lot of value into those things too. And that's something we've been seeing a lot more about is how do you put a value on habitat connectivity?
Right.
How do and those are things that are coming up and we've been talking about for 20 years now. And it's hard to put that value on there, but it's there.
Right.
So
Yeah, in the land trust world, ecosystem services is the term that's used a lot to put value on that of right, we're helping to conserve land and we're effectively paying for, the development rights, subdivision rights. But what more can we do to encourage conservation, both on public and private land? And ecosystem services is certainly at the
right.
top of that list of just maintaining the habitat or improving the habitat. It's worth something.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So coming here to Arapahoe National Forest in Grand County, I mean, you mentioned, what is it, 400,000 acres? Is that right? How big the forest is?
It is
Yeah.
442. Yeah, that's
Wow,
that's what
wow.
I
Well,
that's what I've been told. I haven't
right.
seen them all, but yeah.
Well, so Grand County is, I like to say, Grand County is Rhode Island plus half. And
Right,
85% of it is public between the
right,
forest and BLM. And so of course the land trust, right, we're dealing with private land, currently just over 9,300 acres. But I still feel, we are in the same world as you said earlier, and we work well together. In your experience, and then as you've come here, what has been your relationship, both personal and professionally, with organizations such as local land trusts or HTA, because we've been at those meetings together, or other local collaborative efforts and nonprofits that ultimately we all sit under that same umbrella of conservation?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Good question. And I'm happy to talk about this.
Mhm.
I guess my first, understanding of what a land trust does and what a conservation easement is started down in Montezuma County when I was down there with the public lands, and I got to know some folks with the Montezuma Land Conservancy down there,
Yeah,
MLC.
they're great.
Outstanding group.
Yeah.
And I was eventually asked to be part of that board, and I sat on the board of directors for 4 years there.
Mm,
And I got to see some intimate, and be part of some intimate conversations about what makes sense and just really the the struggles sometimes of getting some of these easements through is
mhm.
amazing. The money it takes, But what was really amazing is to see the landowners and to see, and just to really experience how they come to the table and why they want to do it. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And it's no different than the, the the passion or the mission I feel like I have for my personal life and my job, or you do. They have the same thing, and
Yeah.
it's just, and that's how they can express it, you know. And so it's pretty awesome. It was awesome to be a part of that. And so that was my first experience on that, and it was great to bring a wildlife biologist perspective to those meetings and be like, well, this would actually be a great parcel. This is right in the middle of this elk migration corridor or whatever, you
Mhm.
know. And we had a lot of those conversations, and I was encouraged to be a part of those by my managers at the time at the land management agencies. And so I think that just goes, you know, we've always had that kind of shared stewardship, if you will, of the land.
Sure.
And so, but you know, moving on from there, I've worked with the HPP committee of
Mhm.
CPW, Habitat Partnership Program, and that those folks work closely with landowners and across the country. And it was a great opportunity to be on a board there for several years and to really work with landowners and to learn about their issues and their needs, and just how important it is for fencing materials and fertilization and all these things that really, you know, they're out there making a living, and but they're trying to do the right thing, knowing that they live within, you know, the surroundings of public land or with wildlife, you know.
Mhm.
And so they're trying to do the right thing, and that was a great experience. And lastly, I'll talk about our partnerships here in Grand County. And you know, and I've said, you probably heard me say this, Jeremy, but like when I'm one thing that I can say without doubt about moving here is that um, I've had a lot of experience in my career trying to you know, formulate and or kind of find partners to come to the table and be a part of our conversation. And
Mhm.
and it hasn't always been difficult, and I don't want to sound like that. And but sometimes it's hard to get the buy-in, and it's hard to find. I mean, everyone's busy, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of our partners have their thing, and that's what they want to talk about, right? If you want to talk about horse riding, let's talk about it. If you want to talk about mountain biking, we'll talk about that. But we don't want to talk about the big picture, you know?
Mhm.
And so, and that was my experience in Virginia. We were trying to do the same thing. When I left, we were working hard to incorporate our partners and the public entities into this collaboration of interested parties that we could help, you know, move forward. And it was a difficult process.
Mhm.
And when I walked into Greene County, it was really interesting and unique to see for a town, or sorry, a county of what, 16,000 people.
Give or take. Yeah.
Yeah, the amount of investment and knowledge
Mhm.
and passion about how we can work together on public lands. And you mentioned HTA, to walk in to see how closely they work with us here at the Forest Service, how much we rely on them, and some of the programs that they run for us. With the Grand Places 2050 that Jeremy and I are part of. That is an amazing collaboration of basically all of the community leaders in this county, from what I can see, myself excluded. I think about default person on the group there, but it's amazing. It's amazing thing to see that they've all come to the table selfishly, or
Mhm.
selflessly, I should say. And with, you know, yeah, we all have our thing that we want to bring up, but it's all about how do we make this sustainable to
Right.
Grand County? How do we find a way? I mean, you guys have witnessed it more than I've only been here for one summer and seen it, but you know, the amount of people that come in here and the amount of use that we're getting. How do we make that sustainable? How do we figure out a way to not keep, you know, not build a condo building in that meadow, maybe, you know, or but we need
Which
housing. I know
meadow
that's a
now?
tough
Because I
one.
want to put it on my note. Yeah.
So that's, you know, that's my experience with that, and I'm just really excited to be in the conversation
Mhm.
and try to represent our agency as someone that's here to be a player, you know, and a piece of the puzzle, and do what we can to support the process here.
That's
Yeah.
great. And you said excluding you, but I would include you. It's great to have we've always had forest staff, national forest staff here, but turnover at the higher end, it is very touching and good to have someone like you, a district ranger, be at the table, because it really does show leadership from the forest, especially in communities like this. So don't cut yourself short.
Okay, well, thanks for,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm going to do another little pitch for this event, and then we do have a couple people tuned in. And so if anyone does have questions or comments for Eric, please raise your hand and I'll unmute you. But as you're thinking of your questions, again, this is the first session of Hats Off for Headwaters 2022, which is Colorado Headwaters Land Trust annual event, fundraising event. Today's the first one. On Wednesday will be a panel of conservation easement landowners. And then on Thursday will be a conversation with Land Trust Board and staff. So be sure to tune in those. You can check your emails for those links, as well as social media and on our website. If anyone is watching this and is not connected with us in any way, please feel free to contact me. You can Google Colorado Headwaters Land Trust and find our information. Our mission is to conserve and steward the open lands and natural character of the headwaters of the Colorado River in partnership with the local community. And we envision an inclusive conservation community in Grand County dedicated to the protection of the land. And that vision itself really inspired panels like this to show that while I work and the Land Trust works in private land, we have a strong relationship and an ever-growing relationship with public land agencies. A lot of our easements border public land, especially in Grand County, being, as I said, 85% of the county is public in one way or another. And so it's hard to find a piece of land that isn't touching public in some fashion.
Right.
Yeah. And so this is Eric Freels. We just had someone new join, so I'll reintroduce you. Eric Freels is the Sulphur District Ranger, started just last year, came back to us from spending time on the East Coast, and we're really happy to have him at the helm here in our local forest. So if anyone does have a question, please raise your hand or speak up, and I'll call on you. Otherwise, I have more questions and we can talk for another 20 minutes or so. Wait a second. So Steve, there we go. So this is Steve Fitzgerald. He's the vice president of our board here. Steve, you are unmuted.
Thanks, Jeremy. And Eric, thank you for joining us. One of the things you said intrigued me because it's a passion of mine. I'm a bit of a long-term guy, and you mentioned how when you talk with various stakeholders, they all want to talk about their problem of the moment and not about the long-term implications, what's happening to our planet. I'm curious, if you had an audience full of people like me, to whom you could have that conversation, what is it you would say to them?
Wow, Steve, nice to meet you. And yeah, thanks for that question. That's it's an interesting one, and I do feel that way, and I think we probably are aligned in our thoughts on that. And I think I would say to a group of people that, you know, and this is something that's come to a lot, you know, it's come to the front of my mind much more recently since I've been here. And the reason why is you look across, I'm looking over at the fire scar right now, the East Troublesome fire scar. You know, I've drove through Poudre Canyon this past week and looked at those 200-something thousand acres there. And I guess what I would say is, you know, we have a unique challenge right now, and we're going through a unique time in the habitat that we manage here, with the lodgepole die off, spruce fir die off, the warming climate, that things are changing. And sometimes we just kind of worry about, oh, you know, we have all these dead trees, it's so ugly, how are we going to fix it? You know, oh, all that fire scar is really ugly, and my favorite trail's gone now. How can we fix that? And to your point, it's I try to say, you know, we're only here as a land management agency and as a land manager for such a small blip of time, right? And how do we think about the bigger vision, and how do we come together and bring our partners along to think about what is this going to look like in 150 years.
Mm.
I mean, that's what we're managing for here. What are we going to do here? What's the plan after Rocky Mountain burns to maintain these headwaters and to make sure that that this basin is intact? And so I guess what I would say to a group is like, let's look at where we are in the landscape. Let's see what's happening and see what we can do to set up the next group of managers and partners for success. Because then that's how and they need to do the same for the next and for the next and for the next, and try to get out of this cycle of the here and now, right? Which is tough. That's our society, and we're looking at, we've experienced this. People are frustrated that, some of the roads are still washed out in the fire scar, and I get it. And, it may be, some of these roads may never be open. I mean, that's the reality. It's like, they were probably never in a good spot to begin with. And now this happened, and we're being told maybe they really shouldn't be there. And so maybe we should listen. And so how do we go about that and frame our messaging to our friends and our partners and to the public to say, hey, this is a long-term thing. We're all in this for the long term. And I do think, with some of the recent, climate modeling, and that the Forest Service supports and gets behind, that we really do need to take some harder looks at how we manage what we plant. Do we need to be planting some of these species? I mean, we're gonna see some species kind of evolve out of their range, I think, and things are going to change. And so, that would be my answer, Steve, is just like, we need to just keep looking forward and setting the next group of managers up for success. And we can always do what we can do here to make our comfort, make ourselves comfortable, and do what we can to make public lands accessible. But that, I think, the long term, the long game is where we need to be and talking about.
Yeah, that adaptability and the long-term vision, the common motif that at least was popular when I was in college was the 7 generations, right? We're doing conservation for 7 generations. And I always had a hard time wrapping my head around that until I read an environmental philosopher from Arizona say 2 generations, right? You do this, and so then you teach everyone, and the leapfrog over each other. And I feel that reflects what you said of, well, if today's managers, if you and I teach our successors and they teach their successors, it's slower for sure, but it's much more digestible, and I certainly agree with that.
Right.
We got a question from Paula Stewart. Do you have any school programs in Grand County that we could partner? And I'll expand that to say educational programs. What is the forest doing with the school kids, and what might be an opening for the land trust and the forest to work together?
Yeah, great question, Paula. That's something that we, I say we as an agency, we have kind of not done well, I'll admit, is our reaching out to the public and being advocates for the land, and that educational outreach kind of component. And there's a lot of reasons why, and I could give you lots of reasons and excuses, and but it does come down to our capacity. And so, as many of you probably know, we on the Arapahoe Roosevelt are going to a virtual kind of, I hate to say virtual like shop, but we're kind of going virtual with our information delivery and how we interact with the public, and that includes our offices. We're not going to be opening those up to the public after COVID. That has been closed for a while. And one of the benefits that I see from this, and I know there's opinions on the office closure, and I get that, and I'm okay with those conversations. And I feel the same way when I came on, because I've always worked in an office that had cool skulls, and we could go get some smoky swag, and we could talk about whatever. But is that the best use of a couple of people's time at the front desk? And that's where we're at. Do we have the bandwidth to even do that? And the answer is no. I would rather have those people organize an educational outreach program that goes to the elementary schools here in the county or whatever, because you're absolutely right. That's the piece that we are missing. Sorry, I have this fly that keeps keeps getting me here. And
speaking of species out of their range.
Yeah, right. He's about to be endangered.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's one thing. We are working with partners through the Grand Places and with HTA to kind of bring to have our partners be our conduits of information, if you will, to the public. And this, and to me, includes the educational component. And so what we're doing is an ambassador program where we're going to have HTA hire some ambassadors that we've given them an agreement and some funding to do. We're going to have those folks at some Chamber of Commerce offices, and we're trying to figure out the best place to disseminate this information. But one of those is to also be at events and to be available to these kind of needs, like, hey, why can't we take Smokey to the second graders and talk about public lands? And you know, Jeremy, we've probably talked about this, but you know, this need back east is very evident. And that was one of the things I struggled with being back east was, you know, we were 10 miles from the Forest Service boundary. It was right there. Shenandoah National Park was right there. You'd go into a class there at the local school, and I would bet most of the kids didn't know what a Forest Service was or what the, you know, what anything was concerning public lands. Mm-hmm. And that was a big change for me, because out here in Grand County, we are all basically, for one way or another, tied to our public lands. Sure. And we're here because we recreate there, or we work there, or we work in the recreation industry, and that's all tied to it. So, I mean, it's kind of like that bond. And so I would say that, you know, I'm not saying that the kids here don't need or would benefit from that at all, but I think we're starting from a much better place here in Grand County, where the kids here probably have a better understanding of the importance of public lands in their life. And so how do we do that? We're still working on that, to answer your question. We don't have that in place, but we are going to do that. We're going to work with the local chambers and other entities. And I would love to do that and work with CBW and just try to find ways that we can be creative about getting this message to the kids. So I know that's a non-answer, but you know, we would be open to any partnership that we could do this with, and we look forward to seeing where we could go with this new virtual reality, and this how we info share some of our information. So
yeah, well, that's a great point. And you know, being also from Maryland, you know, the knowledge of having public lands, I think, is different than the knowledge of what the lands represent or what they are with conservation. Because especially out here, yes, there's a lot of recreation, but agriculture or industry that happens on national forests and BLM is something I feel conservation could be a great unifier in that way.
Yeah.
I will unmute Paula in a second, but Doris also asked very specific question. Speaking of education, does the free Parks Pass program for fourth graders still exist? And this might just be for parks. I don't know if it's a full public lands pass.
No, I believe it does, Doris, and I believe it does. And so all those passes have gone virtual, and you can find all those things online. And so I would just Google the fourth grader park pass. I know also they gave fourth graders like a free Christmas tree permit and all kinds of stuff like that to kind of, it was kind of an effort to get that age group kind of involved in public lands and to kind of understand where some of the stuff came from. But I believe that's still moving forward.
Excellent. Paula, go ahead.
Oh, hi, and thank you so much for joining us, Eric. I'm president of the board, and I just wanted to reiterate about this issue of education. Obviously, COVID has kept us out of the schools for a couple of years. I'm, you know, locally here in Fraser, where I live, involved with the Lions Club, and even our vision testing of the school children is just getting up and running again because they didn't want us there. And quite frankly, not many of us wanted to be there. But I think that, to me, the education is the piece of the second, the third, the fourth graders. And yes, they know more because they live here, but they can learn more. So
right.
I just wanted to say thank you for joining us, and anything that comes to mind where you could use an extra hand, or we could help with the grant writing, or whatever it is that you think might have a positive impact on our school children, we'd be really happy to participate. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Paula, for saying hello, and nice to meet you. And yeah, let's, I think everything's on the table right now. I think we're in a unique situation coming out of COVID where um, we're all realizing we probably are ready to get back on the horse, if you will, and get
Right.
some of these programs going. And you're right, they do know a lot, but do they know like about the importance of the drinking water and that part of the world we live in, and how that affects millions of people, and and just the wildfires and stuff like that. There's a lot we could talk about for sure, and let's keep doing that. And I saw from Steve about the Winter Park Fraser Chamber and East Grand Schools. Thank you. Yeah, we have a great partnership with the Winter Park Chamber. And they're going to be one of the folks that are hosting one of our ambassadors through HTA. So thank you for that.
And I realized we never defined HTA. That's Headwaters Trails Alliance. I think not unique to the world of conservation, but we certainly have our own alphabet soup. So I always need to remind myself to define it.
We never use acronyms. What are you talking
No, of
about?
course not. Are there any questions from the audience? Well, I'll ask another one, and this is more higher level of what is something, I believe you do have children, is that correct? Remember you mentioned them.
Yep.
What is something that you're teaching them, or that you want to leave with them about your career or about conservation?
Well, good one. So I do have a daughter. She's 7 years old. She's in second grade at Granby Elementary School. And it's such a unique age where you're trying to teach them everything, how to be kind and share and not lie, and all those important soft skills.
Right.
But then you're like, let's go for a drive, and we drove. Let's go through a drive through the fire and look at this and understand what's going on here, and really just trying to. I personally, from a personal level, I don't want this to be, because I think she's probably exposed to this. I don't want it to be something that she gets turned off by, right? Because it's a fine line. It's like, we want you to be recreating. Let's go skiing, let's go hiking, let's go do this, and you want to be, but you don't want to push it and push them away from those things. And so it's really about finding a way to nurture their own passion for this and find the things. And she loves wildlife and she loves animals, and I think that's the connection. And she loves to talk about why they're here, and she knows a lot about different species and how they operate and everything else. So I think that's great with me, and I'm okay with that. And so I think we're just trying to just instill, that was another reason why it was so inviting to come to a place like Grand County, is to raise your family in a place like this, and say, look, this is important, and this is it's pretty unique to raise be able to raise your family in a place that's surrounded by a park, a national park, and thousands of acres of public lands, and to really just take that into stride and make them try to understand how lucky we are, and just not to take it for granted. And so that's going to be, I think, my challenge as she gets older, is don't take what we have here for granted. And Paula, to your point about, we could always teach them more here, and maybe that's something that's maybe that's something that I can't speak on this with any authority, but maybe that's something that the kids that grow up here kind of tend to do, is take it for granted. You're surrounded by it. You think about the ski area is just that, the ski area, and then kind of think about those things. And I don't know if that's the case. I think it depends on how they grow up, but that's going to be something I'm going to be focusing on, and making sure that we just talk about the little things too. So
That's
yeah.
great. Well, we're coming up on 45 minutes, which is our kind of soft zone. Any final words for this conversation? Anything to pass on to the public? This is being recorded, so many years down the road, people will be watching this video with some insights into the Forest Service. So anything else to share?
Yeah, sure. I just want to say thanks, Jeremy, for inviting me. I appreciate the conversation. It's flown by. I appreciate the questions. I just want to let you know that we're here to be partners in the community. It's evident that this community is still healing from the fires and that the recovery is real and ongoing. And we still have a lot of work to do. And there's a lot of fire danger here in this community on the forest, and that's real. And we're going to be working hard to address that and try to find ways with our partners to mitigate that as much as we can. Like we talked about earlier, the game is changing right in front of our eyes. The rules are changing, and what we used to do 20 years ago isn't adequate now. And so we just need to be willing to adapt and maybe to compromise on what we have to do to make ourselves fire safe and to maintain our the things that are important to us here, like our recreation and wildlife habitat and stuff like that, and our drinking water. So I just wanted to say thanks, and we're here to be your partner, and feel free to reach out to me at any time. I know our office is closed, but I'm available, and we can certainly meet at the office, and you can come in. We can talk about whatever you need to talk about or want to talk about. And we're definitely available to have those conversations.
Great. Well, thank you,
Yep.
Eric. And just to close out again, this is the first virtual panel of Hats Off for Headwaters 2022, our annual fundraiser for Colorado Headwaters Land Trust, which is the local land trust here in Grand County. Tune back in on Wednesday of this week to hear from conservation easement landowners, and then on Thursday to hear from Land Trust Board and staff. You can find all of this information and more. I'm learning how to commercialize this on our website, coloradoheadwaterslandtrust.org, all spelled out. It's really long, but it's right there. And you can buy tickets as well for our final event on Sunday, which Sunday, September 18th, is our banquet. It's a picnic at Casa Vista, which is a venue outside of Fraser. You can bid on silent auction items, live auction items, hear more about projects that we're working on, and really join together to promote conservation of all sorts here in Grand County. So thank you, Eric, again for joining us. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. And I look forward to meeting everyone else elsewhere in the world. Have a good evening.
All right. Thank you all.
Goodbye.
Have a good night.